Gordon Jameson, and I want to welcome you to my studio. I've got an installation of paintings that I did on a trip that I took around the world between July of 2018 and August of 2019. I took a sketchbook with me, and I kept that going through the entire trip. But I didn't really start doing any paintings until we got to a more permanent location on the trip. So the first places we went to, we stopped in Fiji, on our way to Vietnam, then we went to Cambodia, and Bhutan, and then one of the highlights of the trip was going to Nepal, where we met a young man who had been sponsoring through the Mitrata Foundation since he was about 8 or 9 years old. He's now in medical school, he's 24, and this was the first time that we had met him, and it was very emotional, very high point of our trip. There was a lot of discovery of spiritual aspects of culture and also layering of time. Vietnam, it's now a very vibrant place, but lots of activity and very dense with imagery. There's a picture of a monk in the Jade Temple in Ho Chi Minh City that just had beautiful colors, and the experience there was very magical because it was like old Vietnam in the midst of crazy new Vietnam. The next picture down is a nun in Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and I passed her by. She was inside a temple in a niche, and you could get a blessing tied onto your wrist. So I got a blessing, and so she tied the strings on my wrist and held my hand and did a blessing. And then when she was finished, we looked at each other, and it was just an astonishing, beautiful face that I was looking at. It was just filled with some kind of light. So these were the kind of experiences that I was remembering as I was doing sketches. This picture is the street in Kathmandu with all of the wiring that was normal to the city. And so this tangle, and it seemed to me kind of like lines, drawing lines, and then there was all this other information, and so again, layers of stuff and time and dirt and color. And then there's one last picture of traffic in Kathmandu, which was this layer of dust, which kind of symbolizes a lot of things in all those countries. The end of September, we flew from Kathmandu to Milan, Italy, and then took a train to Nice, France, and then drove from Nice to Bayonne across southern France. Starting in October, we were in Bilbao, Spain for 2.5 weeks, and so that was really where I was able to start doing any kind of painting. This was our view from our apartment. After Bilbao, we moved to Seville, Spain for 2.5 months. So we were in the medieval part of the city. My studio space was, again, an extra bedroom, and I continued to work. And so what was really wonderful about Seville is they're very much interested in the Madonna. The worship of Mary is an important part of Catholicism here. Cordoba, this is the mosque in Cordoba which we visited. Now, this could house 15 or 20,000 worshippers at a time. But in the middle of this mosque, the Spanish built a Baroque cathedral. So you're walking through this Moorish architecture, and suddenly you arrive in the extravagance of Spanish Baroque. And so I was looking at Moorish architecture, Moorish influences, but what I was more looking at was Spanish Baroque and the cult of the Madonna. Easter week, they parade all the statues of the Madonna and all the statues of some of the saints and Jesus on these huge platforms. These platforms, over here you can see them, they weigh hundreds of pounds. This is one of the platforms. This is the statue in here. So there are 30 or 40 people under this platform, and they're holding this on their shoulders like this. So they're all under this platform with the statue of the Madonna, with all of the canopies and the candles and flowers and all the things that cover this thing and decorate it, and they're walking with this thing on their backs through the streets. So the rhythm of this has that pace going down the street. But also, everybody in the crowd is holding up cell phones. So the dots that were appearing from other places turned into blue little rectangles of people's cell phones. This sort of halo became an element, and also in this painting, those sticks, and they're like candles. And so this painting is very much about the processions and the Madonnas and the excess of Spanish Baroque. And from Seville, we we had to leave the Schengen countries, which are most of the EU, and you're only allowed to stay for 3 months at a time, then you have to leave for 3 months. And so we ended up going to Brighton, England in January. We were in an apartment in a 19th century house right on the English Channel. We had an unobstructed view of the channel. And the paintings started to change. This chalk cliff became very much an element. So this shape comes from those chalk cliffs, and see, this is actually a bigger version of this one. But it comes through in all these other things, so it kept going, and now it's really an elemental part of my language. But also the dots are still here from Spain. The halo kind of mark is still here from Spain. This little house with legs, or whatever it is, that appeared now in Brighton, and the colors changed. So there was much more influence of gray, much more structure. It was England, so you don't have the Spanish Baroque, you have Protestantism. This is where I started really working more on the structure of the paintings and clarifying some information and letting things go. From Brighton, we moved to Chelsea. In London, we were on the 12th floor. We had a view of the Thames. This is our view. This was my studio in one of the bedrooms looking out. So you see this red shape with points. It's here, it's here, it's here. That comes from these buildings, looking at these buildings, because they had all this sort of pointy architecture and red brick. But again, these elements from Spain, the dots continue, but then it starts to become a more closed-in structure. Instead of being wild and open over in Spain, it becomes more quieter in England and more structured. And then when we got done with London, we moved to Lucca, Italy in April. And we were in a 350-year-old villa. This was the entry to the building, and I get to use this space for my studio. It had great natural light coming in on a good day. So I could sit up in there, and then if it was not a good day, I would work in the kitchen. And if it was a great day, I'd work out in the garden, which was a closed garden. It was this very clipped Italian garden. Lucca is surrounded by its medieval and Renaissance walls. Some of the influence from Lucca, because we were in this walled kind of atmosphere, you start getting a sense of being walled in. And this painting started off as a sketch. Our bedroom window is next to a condo. And every morning around 6 o'clock, first of all, there was a rooster that was cropped. And then there was somebody that came out and rang a bell around 6 o'clock. So there was a sketch that had a note about that noise coming over our wall into our bedroom. This painting was in Tellaro, which is a little town in Cinque Terre, and there was a tiny little church, the oldest church in the town, and a little triangular piazza in front of it, and there was a wedding going on, and so all the guests were out in front in the piazza with their cell phones waiting for the bride to come out. Right, and this is the ocean off in the distance. The arcade outside, this is attached to our building, so we would walk through here all the time. And towards the end, I was doing images that would include that door shape. Then we went on to Croatia for a couple of weeks, and I really stopped painting then. This was the only painting from Croatia. And then I had Ireland and Scotland. It's green, it's gray, it's rocky, and there's lots of sheep. So that's Ireland. So once I got home, I really, was the first time that I could see all these things together. I had nailed half back when we left Spain and the other half back when we left Italy. And so when I came home, I finally got them and I put them all up, and I thought, what? It would be really a treat for people to see that, my trip through the painting and how it progressed. And when COVID hit, the exhibit at Frank got canceled, so I was sitting here thinking, well, I'm just going to install it here. So it is installed in my studio. You can come here, and 2 at a time. You can keep socially distant. You can be in here by yourself, and most of the things that I've just told you are written down. So my languages continue to evolve, and this is where I am now. So this is my newest painting. It's called Border Crossing. I mean, some of the elements that are left over, this green thing is kind of that little house on legs that appears in London. But dots, obviously, there's fewer of them. These kind of structures, and you still get, here's like the cliff structure. The halo structure is kind of going away, but it belongs to little pieces of things. So it's just very interesting to me how all of this trip, you get to see the development of my language for me. And I get to explain it to you as much as I can. So I hope you enjoy your trip here.